The screen is silent, then a bomb explodes. On film, not the battlefield. What if everything you know about World War II cinema is a lie? Hollywood doesn't want you to remember. Hidden in dusty archives are British war classics that expose courage, betrayal, and moral ambiguity. Stories scrubbed from memory, stories that could rewrite history. Why were these films buried, and what truths did they dare to reveal? By the end, the real heroes, and the secrets Hollywood hid, will shock you. The Battle of Britain, 1969. Massive dogfights streak across stormy skies as the RAF scrambles against relentless Luftwaffe waves. Yet beneath the spectacle lies a tale Hollywood quietly sidelines. A film obsessed with strategy over hero worship. Director Guy Hamilton refused to simplify the story for American audiences. It's showing pilots as men burdened by fear, error, and sacrifice. Hollywood prefers aerial heroism with singular American figures, not meticulous British planning. The cast, real RAF veterans among them, lived the tension of missions on screen. The aircraft crashes were real enough to terrify stunt crews. Despite over 20 million feet of footage, critics argued it was too technically precise and emotionally detached. But the truth is raw. These pilots died in history, and the film refuses to mythologize them. Hollywood erased this realism in favor of blockbuster simplification, leaving the full human cost hidden. Watching it today, the roar of engines and the cold faces of young pilots are impossible to ignore. Each dogfight a reminder of human fragility in war. This is not a sanitized victory story. It's a calculation of courage and fear. A history lesson Hollywood hoped would fade. The Guns of Navarone, 1961. Explosions echo across Greek cliffs, and yet the story of the daring mission to destroy Nazi superguns is far darker than Hollywood remembers. While marketed as a sweeping American-style action adventure, its essence is British. Painstaking planning, ethical dilemmas, and the fear of comrades lost. Director J. Lee Thompson refused to cut tension for simpler thrills. The crew endured near-death stunts, firing real artillery, while actors push through claustrophobic caves. Behind the glamour of stars lies a film obsessed with moral complexity. Who survives and why? Who chooses duty over conscience? Hollywood loves the explosions, but ignored the moral questions. Why some soldiers sacrifice, while others fail. Every footstep on Navarone's rocky cliffs carries the weight of consequence. In Britain, the film is celebrated for its blend of human frailty and wartime ingenuity. But in the States, it's remembered only for spectacle. The result is a masterpiece erased from mainstream memory, leaving audiences unaware of its deeper truths. Courage is messy, decisions are devastating, and war never grants clean victories. Went the day well? 1942. The village is peaceful, quiet roads, friendly faces, doors left unlocked, and then everything changes, because the enemy isn't coming. They're already inside. Directed by Alberto Cavalcanti, this film delivers one of the most disturbing wartime ideas ever put on screen. That invasion doesn't always arrive with explosions. It can look like familiarity. German soldiers disguised as British troops infiltrate a small English village, and what follows is not a battle, but a betrayal of trust so complete it turns civilians into participants in war. This is where the film becomes deeply uncomfortable, and why Hollywood has never fully embraced it. There are no clear battle lines, no distant front lines separating danger from safety. Violence erupts in homes, in churches, in places meant to feel secure. And ordinary people are forced into brutal decisions, transforming from bystanders into killers almost overnight. Hollywood war narratives rely on distance, on the idea that war happens over there. But went the day? Well, destroys that illusion. It suggests that war can arrive quietly, wearing a familiar face, and demand moral choices without warning. That idea is difficult to package, difficult to glorify, and nearly impossible to remake without losing its edge. Because at its core, the film asks something deeply unsettling. If the enemy looked exactly like you, would you recognize them in time? Hell is a City, 1960. Rain lashes against dimly lit streets as a manhunt unfolds, not on a battlefield, but in the shadow of a war that never truly ended. This isn't a traditional war film, and that's exactly why Hollywood keeps its distance. Directed by Val Guest, the story follows a detective tracking a criminal through post-war Manchester, but beneath the surface lies something far more unsettling, a society still scarred by conflict. Veterans drift through the city, haunted and restless, their war unfinished in their minds. Violence feels casual, almost routine, as if the battlefield simply moved into civilian life. Hollywood prefers clean endings, wars that conclude with victory parades and closure. But Hell is a City refuses that comfort. It suggests that war lingers, reshaping people long after the guns fall silent. The psychological damage is subtle but relentless, etched into every character's face. Even justice feels hollow, as if the system itself is exhausted. This quiet, uncomfortable truth makes the film difficult to celebrate in mainstream war narratives. Watching it today feels invasive, like witnessing wounds that never healed. It strips away the illusion that peace restores normalcy. Instead, it leaves one question hanging in the air. If war never truly ends, then what exactly did anyone win? Carve Her Name with Pride, 1958. A coded message crackles through the airwaves, and somewhere in occupied France, a young woman waits, knowing one mistake means death. This is the true story of Violette Szabo, a British SOE agent whose bravery defies everything Hollywood typically portrays. There are no exaggerated heroics here, no last-minute rescues, only tension, silence, and the constant shadow of betrayal. Director Lewis Gilbert builds the film with quiet dread. Every mission feels like a step closer to capture, and when it comes, it is swift and merciless. Szabo's story doesn't follow the traditional arc of triumph. Instead, it confronts viewers with the cost of resistance. Interrogations are cold, calculated, and deeply human, revealing strength not through action, but endurance. Hollywood has often avoided stories like this, especially those centered on female operatives whose fates are tragic rather than triumphant. There's no easy victory to package, no comforting resolution. The film forces audiences to sit with sacrifice, to understand that some heroes are remembered not for surviving, but for refusing to break. That's what makes it dangerous. It challenges the idea that courage guarantees survival, and in doing so, it preserves a truth Hollywood has quietly pushed aside. Sometimes, the bravest stories are the ones that don't end in victory. In Which We Serve, 1942. The sea is calm until it isn't. One moment, a British destroyer cuts through the water with quiet confidence. The next, it's torn apart, survivors drifting in the wreckage of what was once their world. Directed by David Lean and Noel Coward, this film doesn't just depict war, it immerses you in its sudden, brutal unpredictability. What makes this film so unsettling is its structure. As sailors cling to life in the open sea, their memories unfold in fragments, moments of laughter, routine, and duty, now shattered by violence. There is no singular hero. Every man matters. Every loss is personal. Hollywood often builds its war stories around individuals, but this film insists on something else: collective sacrifice. It was made during the war itself, and that urgency bleeds into every frame. There's patriotism, yes, but it's grounded in realism, not spectacle. Fear is present, exhaustion is visible, and survival feels uncertain until the very end. For Hollywood, this kind of storytelling is difficult to replicate. It lacks the polished distance of hindsight and refuses to simplify the experience. Watching it now feels like stepping into history as it was happening, unfiltered, immediate, and deeply human. And perhaps that's why it's rarely revisited. It doesn't let war become entertainment. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, 1943. As a single insult in a Turkish bath erupts into a duel. But what follows is far more dangerous than wounded pride. Directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, this film quietly dismantles the very idea of British military honor. Clive Candy, the aging officer at its center, is not a villain, but he may be dangerously outdated. His belief in gentlemanly warfare clashes with a new, ruthless reality where enemies do not play by rules. Hollywood has long favored clear-cut heroes, but this film refuses to provide one. Candy's ideals, once noble, slowly reveal their flaws. War is no longer about honor. It's about survival. The film dares to question whether tradition itself becomes a liability in modern conflict. Even during wartime Britain, it faced criticism for portraying an officer as naive. Its emotional weight builds quietly, spanning decades of friendship, love, and loss. The enemy is not just across the battlefield, it's time itself, eroding old beliefs. For Hollywood, this introspection is uncomfortable. It suggests that the greatest threat may come from within, from leaders unable to adapt. Watching it today feels like witnessing a slow collapse of certainty. It doesn't glorify war, it interrogates it. And in doing so, it exposes a truth often avoided. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in war is believing you understand it. A Bridge Too Far, 1977. Paratroopers descend through the sky in what should have been a decisive strike, but something is already wrong. Based on Operation Market Garden, this film reconstructs one of World War II's most ambitious and catastrophic Allied failures. Directed by Richard Attenborough, it assembles an all-star cast, yet refuses to glorify them. Hollywood often turns war into victory. This film does the opposite. It meticulously shows how overconfidence, miscommunication, and flawed intelligence doomed the mission from the start. Soldiers fight bravely, but bravery isn't enough. Bridges are lost, reinforcements never arrive, and entire units are left stranded. The tension builds not from triumph, but inevitability. Viewers begin to realize, long before the characters do, that the plan is collapsing, and still the soldiers push forward. That's what makes it devastating. For Hollywood, failure on this scale is difficult to market. There's no satisfying conclusion, no heroic turnaround. Just the quiet realization that thousands were sacrificed for a plan that never had a chance. All watching it feels like being trapped inside a mistake that cannot be undone. It challenges the myth that Allied forces always prevailed through superior strategy. Sometimes they didn't. And this film refuses to let that truth be forgotten. Sink the Bismarck, 1960. Maps cover the walls, voices remain calm, decisions are made in silence, but each one carries the weight of lives at sea. Directed by Lewis Gilbert, this film strips naval warfare down to its coldest form, calculation. There are no sweeping speeches, no dramatic hero entrances, just strategy, patience, and the quiet tension of waiting. The hunt for the German battleship Bismarck becomes a chess match across the Atlantic. Officers analyze movements, predict outcomes, and issue orders that will determine survival or destruction. The action, when it comes, is brief and brutal. Ships burn, men vanish, and the ocean swallows everything without ceremony. Hollywood rarely embraces this kind of storytelling. There's no single hero to follow, no emotional monologue to anchor the narrative. Instead, the film focuses on process, the machinery of war itself. It reveals how victories are often the result of calculated risks, not dramatic last stands. What makes it unsettling is its detachment. War is not glorified, it's managed. Lives become numbers, outcomes become probabilities. And when the Bismarck finally falls, there is no celebration, only silence. It's a film that forces viewers to confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes war is decided not by courage, but by cold, relentless logic. The Cruel Sea, 1953. The ocean is endless and unforgiving. In this film, and there are no safe zones, no moments of relief. Directed by Charles Friend, it follows a Royal Navy crew escorting convoys through U-boat-infested waters, where danger lurks beneath every wave. What sets this film apart is its honesty. The enemy is often invisible, striking without warning and disappearing just as quickly. But the real conflict lies within the crew. Exhaustion builds, morale fractures, decisions haunt those forced to make them. One moment, they're rescuing survivors. The next, they're ordered to abandon them for the greater mission. Hollywood war films often highlight bravery, but rarely the psychological cost. Here, it's unavoidable. Every choice leaves a mark. Every loss lingers. The sea becomes a silent witness to suffering that no one can escape. There's no triumphant soundtrack, no clear sense of victory, and just survival, and the heavy price that comes with it. Watching it feels suffocating, as if the water itself is closing in. It challenges the idea that heroism is clean or noble. Sometimes it's messy, painful, and filled with regret. And that's precisely the kind of truth Hollywood struggles to embrace. Reach for the Sky, 1956. A crash, flames, and then impossible survival. This is the story of Douglas Bader, a fighter pilot who lost both legs and refused to accept the end of his career. Directed by Lewis Gilbert, the film builds its tension not from battle alone, but from defiance. Bader's determination is relentless. Against medical advice, against military doubt, he fights to return to the skies. And when he does, he becomes one of the RAF's most formidable pilots. But the film doesn't present this as simple inspiration. It shows the cost, physical pain, emotional strain, and the constant pressure to prove himself. Hollywood loves comeback stories, but this one is different. There's no easy victory. Bader's personality is complex, even difficult. He is driven, stubborn, sometimes abrasive. Yet that same intensity is what keeps him going. The film refuses to soften him into a perfect hero. Instead, it presents a man shaped by adversity, navigating a world that doesn't know what to do with him. Watching it feels like witnessing a battle beyond the battlefield. It raises an uncomfortable question. Is resilience always admirable? Or can it come at a cost? That complexity is what sets it apart, and perhaps why it's rarely celebrated in the modern war cinema. The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957, upgraded. The jungle suffocates. Steel strikes wood in perfect rhythm. And something feels wrong. This isn't just a POW survival story. It's a psychological collapse Hollywood has never been comfortable confronting. Directed by David Lean, the film dares to suggest that a British officer doesn't just endure captivity, he embraces it. Colonel Nicholson's obsession with building the perfect bridge becomes a disturbing symbol, not resistance, not survival, but pride twisted into collaboration. And that's where the film becomes dangerous. It blurs a line Hollywood depends on, the clear separation between hero and traitor. This is exactly why the film is rarely framed this way in modern discussions. Hollywood celebrates the spectacle, the explosion, all the iconic ending, but quietly avoids the deeper implication, that discipline and honor can become liabilities, that a hero can lose himself so completely he begins serving the enemy without realizing it. There's a reason no modern remake dares to explore this angle. It's too uncomfortable, too morally complex, too destructive to the clean war narratives Hollywood prefers to sell. By the time the bridge falls, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like exposure, a realization that the greatest danger wasn't the enemy camp, but the mindset that made it possible. The Eagle has landed, 1976. World War II is often told through grand battles and heroic triumphs. The Eagle has landed chooses a quieter, darker path, weaving suspense from strategy and human uncertainty rather than sheer action. Directed by John Sturges, it imagines a daring plot by German commandos to kidnap Winston Churchill, a scenario that blends history with tension in ways Hollywood rarely attempts. From the first moments, the film's tone is deliberate. Soldiers move with precision, but the moral lines blur. Are these men villains or professionals caught in impossible circumstances? Civilians are caught in the crossfire, and even the protagonists face internal conflict that threatens mission success. Every decision carries weight, every mistake multiplies risk, and the outcome feels precarious rather than scripted. Unlike the sweeping war epics of the decade, the suspense here is psychological. There are no last-minute heroics, no tidy resolutions. Victory is uncertain, and failure could strike at any turn. The tension is built from anticipation and human interaction, making it both subtle and uncomfortably real. Audiences at the time were unprepared. They expected clear lines, triumphant arcs, and the comfort of righteous outcomes. Instead, the Eagle has landed delivered moral ambiguity, suspense, and a quiet unease. Its memory faded not because it lacked quality, but because it asked viewers to hold complexity in a decade that preferred simplicity. Today it stands as a hidden gem, a war story that doesn't celebrate, it questions. Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. The desert stretches endlessly, and so does the illusion. This isn't just the story of a war hero, it's the unraveling of one. Directed by David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia presents a figure Hollywood should celebrate, but doesn't fully embrace, because the deeper truth is far less comfortable. T.E. Lawrence isn't a clean-cut hero. Yeah, he's brilliant, conflicted, and increasingly consumed by his own legend. As his influence grows, so does his detachment from reality, from morality, from himself. the film quietly suggests that the myth of Lawrence was not just built, but manipulated. And that's where it collides with Hollywood's preferred narrative. Because this story doesn't just question a man, it questions empire, intervention, and the idea of the heroic outsider. It exposes how Western figures insert themselves into foreign conflicts, reshape them, and then leave behind consequences they don't have to live with. That perspective is rarely emphasized in mainstream retellings. Instead, the film is often reduced to its spectacle, its sweeping visuals, its scale, while its most critical themes are softened or ignored. Now, there's a reason modern war cinema avoids stories like this. It's not just complex, it's accusatory. By the end, Lawrence isn't triumphant, he's fractured. And the legend feels hollow, because the film reveals something Hollywood struggles to confront. Sometimes the hero isn't the solution, but part of the problem. History doesn't disappear, it's buried. These films weren't forgotten by accident. They revealed truths too complex, too uncomfortable for easy storytelling. War isn't just victory, it's doubt, failure, and moral collapse. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. The stories we don't revisit are often the ones that matter most. So, ask yourself, what else has been quietly erased?